Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into something that, well, let's face it, it affects all of us eventually. Aging. That slow creep, The changes in how we move, how we think. But what if aging wasn't just about managing decline? What if we could actually improve our fitness, our mental sharpness as we get older?
That's exactly what we're digging into today. There's some really fascinating new research looking at effective ways to promote healthy aging. We're focusing on a specific study that compared different kinds of physical activity for older men. Some involved cognitive challenges, some didn't.
Right, and the source for this deep dive is an article titled Comparing Adapted Small-Sided Team Sports and Aerobic Exercise with or Without Cognitive Games, Effects on Fitness and Cognition in Older Men. Quite a title. It's by Filipa, Robert Trybulski, Grzegorz, Trybek, Waldemar, Moska, Henrique, Castro, and Francisco Tomás González-Fernández. Published in the Journal of Sport Science and Medicine just this year, 2025.
Yeah. And the main point of their research really was to figure out which types of interventions could give the biggest boost to cognitive and physical fitness for older men who are already showing, some signs of cognitive decline. It's all about enhancing quality of life, not just kind of slowing the inevitable.
Okay, so we know aging brings changes, but maybe let's unpack that a bit more. What exactly is happening biologically, functionally, as we get older?
Sure. Well, the scientific term is human senescence. It's basically this gradual biological aging process. Cognitively, this often means declines in memory, executive functions.
You're like planning, making decisions.
Exactly. Planning, inhibition, flexibility in thinking, and processing speed, too. A lot of this is linked to structural changes in the brain. Areas like the prefrontal cortex, the basal ganglia, they change over time. But it's really important to stress this varies hugely from person to person. It can range from sort of mild effects in healthy aging all the way to more significant issues like mild cognitive impairment or MCI.
Right, so it's not a uniform process at all.
Right.
And what about the physical side? What are the key changes there?
Physically, yeah, we often see increased frailty. That basically means being more vulnerable to stressors, finding it harder to bounce back. And a big part of that is often sarcopenia.
Sarcopenia. That's muscle loss, right?
Yeah, age-related loss of muscle mass and strength. It happens across different organ systems, sometimes losing, 0.5% to maybe 2% per year between ages 30 and 70. It's a slow decline, but it adds up if you don't actively work against it.
Okay, those are definitely significant challenges. So what tools do we already have? What have been the main strategies, say, for pushing back against this cognitive and physical decline?
Well, for cognitive issues, especially MCI, one promising area has been computerized cognitive stimulation, or CCS. Studies show these kinds of programs can actually slow down cognitive decline. They can boost specific things like episodic memory, attention, those executive functions we mentioned, planning, inhibition, flexibility, working memory, processing speed, even visual spatial skills. It all comes down to neuroplasticity.
The brain's ability to change and adapt.
Precisely. The brain's amazing capacity to rewire itself based on experience.
Okay, and physical exercise. We always hear about that. How does it fit in, especially with brain health?
Oh, hugely important. Physical exercise has really significant preventive effects against cognitive decline, even against dementia. When you exercise regularly, you improve blood flow to the brain's cerebral blood flow. And that kicks off all sorts of good stuff. Neurobiological mechanisms like angiogenesis.
New blood vessels.
Right, and neurogenesis, new brain cells, and synaptogenesis, which is new connections between those cells. Plus, it ramps up neurotransmitter synthesis. The end result is often increased gray and white matter volume in brain areas crucial for thinking. So yeah, it's powerful.
So exercise is good, brain games can help, but this study looked at something a bit different too, right? More dynamic, more social stuff like team sports.
Exactly, and that's a really interesting angle. Team-based sports or recreational activities, they're different from just, say, structured gym exercises. There's often a bigger emphasis on enjoyment, on social interaction, alongside the physical part. So yes, they can definitely improve cardiovascular fitness, but they also offer these unique cognitive benefits, particularly for executive function and attention.
Why is that?
Well, think about it. Team sports demand constant physical effort, but also social cues, quick decisions, coordinating complex movements. All of that together actively builds what scientists call cognitive reserve, sort of like a mental buffer. We've even seen things like community football programs for men with early dementia showing real improvements in quality of life.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So how did these researchers actually set up their study to compare these different approaches?
They used a really solid design, a randomized parallel controlled intervention study lasting 12 weeks. They basically split the participants into 5 different groups.
5 groups. Okay.
Yep. You had team sports only, TS, team sports plus cognitive training, TS plus C, aerobic exercise only, A, aerobic exercise plus cognitive training, A plus C, and then a control group who just carried on with their normal lives.
And who are the participants? You mentioned older men with some cognitive decline.
That's right. They recruited 50 older male volunteers. The average age was around 69.3 years. And the key thing was they all showed signs of cognitive decline. They screened them using the Montreal Cognitive Assessment, the MACUA test.
Oh, yes, and the BOGA.
Yeah, it's a standard tool, pretty reliable for checking attention, memory, executive functions. Everyone included had a score of 26 or below, which is generally considered the threshold for mild cognitive impairment. So these were guys who stood to benefit.
Okay, specific group. So what did the actual programs look like week to week?
All right, so for 12 weeks, everyone in the intervention groups did 2 60-minute sessions per week. The team sports guys played small-sided games like 5-a-side handball and football.
Yeah.
So very dynamic, interactive. The aerobic group did structured circuit training. Think jumping jacks, walkouts, high knees, lunges, planks, burpees, squats, step-ups, that kind of thing.
Shot it. Standard circuit.
Then the TS plus C and A plus C groups, they did their respective physical activity, plus an extra 20-minute session using cognitive training software called Fit4Elters. This software specifically targets memory, attention, and executive functions.
And the control group.
They just kept up their usual routines, didn't add anything new. They were the baseline.
Makes sense. And how did they measure if any of this was actually working? What were the key things they looked at before and after?
They used a few different measures. For cognition, the main one was that Moska test score, again. For physical fitness, they used parts of the senior fitness test. That included the chair stand test, how many times you can stand up from a chair in 30 seconds, basically measuring lower limb strength. Also, the arm curl test for upper limb strength. The 8-foot up and go test, which looks at mobility, agility, and balance, how quickly you can get up, walk 8 feet, turn, and sit back down.
Right.
And the 6-minute walk test for aerobic endurance, just how far you can walk in 6 minutes. They also checked flexibility with the chair sit and reach and the back scratch tests.
And they measured all this at the start and then right after the 12 weeks?
Exactly. Before and after comparison.
All right, the moment of truth then. What did they find? Let's get to the results. Which group saw the biggest changes?
Okay, so the big picture. There were significant differences between the groups after the 12 weeks, particularly in the Moska scores. So cognitive function and also in lower limb strength, mobility and balance, and aerobic endurance.
Okay, let's break that down. Cognition first, the Moska scores. What happened there?
All right, so for cognition, basically all 4 active groups, TS, TS plus C, A, and A plus C, showed significant improvements in their Moska scores compared to the control group. The controls didn't really change. But here's the really interesting part. The groups doing team sports, both with and without the extra cognitive training, showed the largest improvements in cognition. They seemed to get the biggest mental boost.
Wow. Okay, so team sports really shone for the cognitive side. What about physical fitness? Did they lead there too?
Pretty much, yeah. For lower body strength, measured by the chair stand, both the TS and TS plus C groups got significantly stronger. The A plus C group, aerobic with cognitive, showed a small gain, maybe meaningful, but the aerobic only and control groups didn't change significantly. And upper body strength, the arm curl. Again, significant improvements only in the TS and TS plus C groups. The other 3 groups, not so much change there.
That's interesting. So just doing the aerobic circuit didn't boost upper body strength in this case, but playing team sports did. What about moving around, mobility endurance?
Good question. For mobility, agility, balance the up, and go test, the TS, TS plus C, and A plus C groups all got significantly quicker, which is better. The aerobic-only group had less improvement. There was a slight quirk where the control group also showed a statistically significant change, but the researchers noted that should be viewed cautiously, maybe just variability or something else going on.
Okay.
And for aerobic endurance, the 6-minute walk test. All 4 intervention groups, TS, TS plus C, A, and A plus C, walked significantly further after 12 weeks. The control group, again, no real change.
So lots of positives for the active groups, especially team sports, across strength, mobility, endurance, and cognition. Was there anything that didn't improve?
Yes, that's important too. Flexibility. The sit and reach test and the back scratch test.
Yeah.
No significant improvements were seen in any group, not even the intervention ones.
Ah, okay. So if flexibility is your main goal, these kinds of activities by themselves aren't the specific answer based on this study.
That's exactly right. The programs were really focused on, gross motor skills, cardiovascular work, strength, balance. They didn't include specific targeted stretching or flexibility exercises. To improve flexibility, you generally need dedicated stretching, yoga, that kind of thing, which just wasn't part of these particular interventions.
Those results are really quite striking. Let's try and unpack the why a bit more. Why do you think the team sports groups in particular did so well across the board? Was there anything in these results that kind of surprised you?
Well, I think the key is that multifaceted stimulation you get from team sports. It's not just physical, it's inherently engaging. You got the physical exertion, yes, but also constant tactical thinking, decision-making under pressure, and, crucially, interacting with other people. That combination creates a much richer environment for promoting health overall, both body and mind, compared to just doing aerobic exercises alone.
Right, it's hitting multiple systems at once.
Exactly. And when you add the cognitive training on top, like in the TS plus C group, it seems to amplify the benefits. You're directly targeting executive functions, attention, memory, while also getting the physical benefits. This likely supports neuroplasticity and builds that cognitive reserve we talked about. It's probably driven by things like increased BDNF.
That brain fertilizer.
Yeah, exactly. And better blood flow in the brain, maybe reducing some chronic inflammation too. These are the likely biological mechanisms.
And presumably the social aspect, the fun factor, helps people stick with it too.
Absolutely, that's huge. Team sports often boost what we call intrinsic motivation. You do it because you enjoy it. The social side makes it more fun, more engaging. That could lead to much better long-term adherence compared to maybe slogging it out on a treadmill alone. Plus, the movements in team sports are often dynamic, varied, functionally relevant to real life, and sometimes hit higher intensities than a steady aerobic workout. As for surprises, maybe not a total shock that team sports were good, but the magnitude of the difference, especially in cognition and strength compared to aerobic alone, was really quite compelling. It just highlights how powerful that integrated approach can be.
So thinking practically now, what are the main takeaways here for you, our listener, or maybe for people designing programs for older adults?
I think the implications are pretty clear. Incorporating adapted team sports into community programs for older adults could be a fantastic strategy. It could boost how many people stick with the program while delivering both physical and cognitive benefits. And adding some structured cognitive exercises, like the software they used, seems to optimize things even further. So health professionals, policymakers, they should really recognize the value of these kinds of activities, ones that are social, mentally engaging, and physically active all at once. Now, we should also mention the limitations. Like any study, it was a relatively small group, just 50 men. 12 weeks is good, but maybe not long enough to see the absolute full long-term effects. And they didn't follow up later on.
So, more research needed, as always.
As always. But the findings are really promising and definitely point towards the benefits of this kind of combined engaging activity.
This has been fascinating. It really underscores the power of keeping things varied, social, and challenging as we age. It's not just about exercise in isolation, but how we engage our whole selves.
Absolutely. To sum it up, this study strongly suggests that team sports, alone or with cognitive training, delivered significant improvements in cognition, lower body strength, mobility, and endurance for these older men with some cognitive decline. Aerobic training helped too, especially with endurance, but the team sports often provided, well, a bigger bang for the buck across multiple areas. But yeah, if flexibility is the goal, you need to add specific flexibility work.
We've really only skimmed the surface here. If you want all the details, the specific methods, the full results, we definitely encourage you to read the original article. Again, that's Comparing Adapted Small-Sided Team Sports and Aerobic Exercise with or Without Cognitive Games, Effects on Fitness and Cognition in Older Men.
And of course, if you found this deep dive useful, please follow our channel, turn on those notifications. That way you won't miss our future explorations into important research like this.
And finally, just something to think about. Beyond structured exercise, what kinds of playful, social, mentally stimulating group activities could you maybe bring into your own life or encourage in your community to help foster a more vibrant, robust aging process?